Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today, I have a lineup of terrifying encounters. I have some very important news, and I have a mail open. A subscriber sent me a gift, and I'd like to share it with you all. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help, and it matters. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? Hey guys, I hope everyone is doing well today. Before we get into today's upload, I'd like to share with you a gift that I received from a subscriber. I, since starting this channel, have received some gifts, and usually when a subscriber sends me something, I like to share it. This gift came from a subscriber from all the way from Australia, and he goes by the name of Pyro Bob, and you guys might recognize him from the comment section. He had shared his encounters with us from the land down under. So we have this really cool Australian Yeti or Yahweh t-shirt. I like it a lot. Very cartoonish. Kind of gives a different feel about cryptids. You know, every once in a while you got to have fun with them. This next gift is very, very unique. I'm blown away. When I talked to him, I made a joke and I was like, yeah, Australia is the land down under, the land where everything wants to kill you. And he got me this amazing sweatshirt. And it's pretty cool. Around the border of Australia, it's got all the deadly things: sharks, stingrays, cyclones, the devil at Tasmania, sharks with freaking lasers, stinging jellyfish, killer crocs, and then in the shirt, a big rock, a man-eating wombat, big spiders, and so on. Giant roos, poisonous snakes. Very, very cool. And then I really like little things. I've had one subscriber send me from West Virginia. He had found a Bigfoot, kind of a silhouette, kind of imposed on the flag and then cut out. A very cool postcard. Yahweh surfing in Australia. I mean, how cool is that? And then another postcard where it says Yahweh country. And then a beautiful little letter. Hi, Jeff. Just a little something from Australia to show our appreciation for the amount of hard work you do. I liked the Australian Explained one so much I bought one for myself. Hope you and your family are well. Love from Pyro Bob and his wife. Well, I really appreciate it. And, you know, I get blown away sometimes because I never anticipated this channel to ever be what it is. I never thought I would have more than 100 subscribers. And then when I hit 1,000, I never thought, or when I hit 100, I never thought I'd have 1,000. But, we are a family, and I really appreciate everything you guys do for me. Hang on, my throat's bothering me, sorry. Everything that you guys do for me, I appreciate. And it's a token of me showing my appreciation. I've gotten some amazing books from subscribers. Elizabeth Sisney, she sent me a whole huge collection of the Skynet collection. Just really interesting stuff. Sean Atwood, actually, I interviewed him on the channel about a month ago, 2 months ago. He had me on his channel, but he sent me his book autographed. So I really appreciate things like this. And when subscribers send me stuff like the painting on the wall, that means more to me than anything. So thank you, Bob. And let's get into some encounters. All right, guys, before we get into some encounters, I have some very interesting and exciting news to share with you. About a month ago, I met a subscriber named Brad. He sent me his final encounter that he had, and I shared it on the channel. It's where he and a friend were out in the woods, and they had spotted a Dogman, and what I believe to be a guardian angel, or his guardian angel / Dogman hunter, appeared and slayed a Dogman in front of him. He's appeared on Vic Cundiff's show a couple times, and he's a very nice guy, regardless of your opinions of how he went about what he did by hunting a Dogman. Anyway, I was scanning through some news feeds and stuff like that Google suggests, and I had kind of popped up a Reddit post that he had posted. Well, about a week and a half ago, I'd say, I needed some advice. So I said, hey, I need some advice. He said, I got to talk to you about something too. So I had been super busy. I have not had a chance to call him. And then I spot this Reddit post. And pretty much, I'll just share it with you. Hey, you may have heard of me, Brad, a.k.a. Brad. I've had multiple Dogman encounters, and about how I went toe-to-toe with those creatures in a spec ops I planned and conducted against them out near where my mom lives. Those were harrowing encounters, to be sure. These animals are nothing to mess around with. I only did it because I am a thrill-seeking adrenaline junkie with both the skill and knowledge to be able to pull it off. Given who I am and what I have done with my life, married, divorced, finance degree at 50, Dogman hunter, etc., I feel I'm duty-bound to speak for those of you who are interested in pursuing this creature. First, it is real. Second, you do not have the skill nor constitution to handle it. You need to leave this heavy lifting to people like me. Third, you will die if you try to mess with one of these beasts, guaranteed. I've engaged packs of wild, ferocious dogmen in mortal combat, and even I barely made it out alive. One final point, then I'll allow you to get onto your day. Donald Trump is also a Dogman hunter. He knows that a brood pack is located south of the border in Mexico. This is why he wants to build the wall. Terms like coyote and chupacabra is all code name for Dogman. Have you heard about all of those poor souls trying to migrate to America being found dead in the desert? I got news for you, brother. That is the work of Dogman. This is why it is absolutely 100% that we elect Trump again, so that he can finish the work he began. Something big is coming. I can feel it. All these migrants coming north. It's just like the ringing of the dinner bell for Dogmen. Then, what is to stop them from continuing to head north, meaning Dogmen, just like the actual coyotes did decades ago? Well, I'll tell you what. I don't want to see these Dogmen become as commonplace in America as the coyote. That could very well spell complete and utter doom. 1 million for the human race. You don't have to agree with his political stance. I do, but you don't have to. That's neither here nor there. What he just said is something that has not been looked at. And that information is very interesting. But this next little info from Brad via a phone call that I made with him today. He's going to go on a hunt again. But this time, not with guns. Well, he will be armed. But this time he's going with camera. And he's going to try to take some or get some photos of Dogman. He has a plan. He's bringing his firearms with him to remain safe and alive. And he has a plan of how he is going to try and get these photos. If anyone else were to tell me that, hey, I'm going to do this, I would really seriously try to talk them out of it, or tell them, be careful about 1 million times. I told him to be careful, but not 1 million times. I have faith in him. I have faith that he is going to come back from this little trip that he is going on eventually in the next month. That he will come back with a photo. He shared with me today that once he does this, if he succeeds, if he doesn't, he's going to share with us the trip and how it went down. And that will be his last time dealing with these creatures. He is tired of these things. And he knows that they're dangerous, and he knows a location. He's kind of spotted out a location that he's going to go to and try his darndest to get photos of these creatures for us and share them exclusively on this channel. So that's the news. I am very excited. I am appreciative of him for thinking of me like that. It really does mean a lot. And like I said, if it was any other person that didn't have the skill set he has, I would say, please don't do it. Be careful. Da 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 da. I just said, be careful. Talk to you soon. So that's the news. Let's get into some encounters. Today's first encounter. This incident occurred about 7 years ago when I was in my late teens on a muzzle-loading mule deer hunt in the far northeastern part of Utah. This area contains some of the most remote places in the state. I've been frequently out in this area, Summit County, that cuts in and out of lower Wyoming, since before I can remember, including lots of hiking, backpacking, camping, hunting, and being involved in some of my grandfather's work. I am skeptical of things not proven by methods of science, but I don't deny all of those things. I find that it's impossible for science to know all that is out in this vast world. My grandfather was recently retired biologist and former conservation officer for the state, and he was a regional specialist and was over wildlife and habitat management for many years. He did everything from habitat management programs to quite literally wrangling moose to be transplanted and darting black bear. He has seen mountain lions, birds of all kinds, bear, small mammals, plants, and natural phenomena for the majority of his life. He understands so much that many people, including myself, will never be able to even imagine. He is scientific, honest, straightforward, level-headed. He's agnostic and is not superstitious, and often used to tease a certain CO who thinks Bigfoot, skinwalkers, and other creatures exist. Other than this experience, he has never encountered an animal that he could not at least partially identify. And other than the natural, innate fear of being in close quarters with a bear, drunk and belligerent hunter, or incredibly potent tranquilizing medication, he has told me over and over he has never been terrified of an animal or experience like this, only curious or surprised. It was late September, and we were in a small camp by a lake in the high Uinta Mountains, hunting both grouse and mule deer with muzzleloaders. The camp was a small collection of men and women my grandfather had worked with over the years as a supervisor, biologist, CO, and these people I grew up with. One of the women, a new wife to one of the guys, had shot a buck deer, injuring but not killing it immediately, and they had lost track of it. Devastated by the thought of wasting an animal, she returned to camp in the afternoon, upset and concerned that the deer had run into an even more secluded area of the mountain, which was hard to reach from the trail that she had shot it from. It was a place my grandfather was familiar with because it was such a pain to get to, with lots of deadfall and steep terrain. We volunteered to go in the late afternoon to search for the deer, following a scant blood trail that she had tracked for a while before getting fatigued and intimidated by the terrain. Because both my grandfather and I were in good shape and he was familiar with the area, it didn't feel like a big deal. Before we left, she had mentioned hearing what she assumed were coyote, which made her even more concerned that if the deer had died, they would ruin the meat and hide before she could harvest it. We took off in the early evening, expecting to be back within an hour or two after searching and having our guns with us, just in case we found the animal still alive or came across another buck worth harvesting. It was steep in places, with lots of deadfall and varying heights, making the hike slower and more tedious than we had hoped for, making us understand the other hunters' fatigue. She had marked the blood trail with bright orange pieces on the trees, which we followed for maybe 20 minutes, and then it got hard to track. The sun was getting close to setting at this point, and we knew getting out would be just as long as getting in. We had just about decided to stop when we found a spot near a fallen tree that looked like it had recently been bedded down in, followed by splatters of fairly fresh blood, and we continued longer. When the sun had just about set and the light had faded from the trees, we removed the firing caps from our guns to make them now completely safe, as it was now illegal and irresponsible to hunt in such absence of decent light. My grandfather pulled out his large Maglite flashlight from his pack, and I put my headlamp on to begin the hike back using our GPS to find the trailhead. About 10 minutes on our way back, we started to hear more movement among the trees. It was normal for animals to start moving now that the sun had gone down, as animals would likely be starting to head towards the clearings for water or to graze in the safety of lower light. Small and distant sounds of crunching leaves, pattering of hooves of animals, or small bits of movement in the trees from squirrels or birds were common and expected. We did not expect the deafening, disturbing sound we heard next, which vaguely and initially reminded me of a coyote howl, but by a few seconds it was frightening and more human-like and unidentifiable. It started with what sounded like a person screaming, but then got louder and more intense with a screech to it, so unlike any coyote or any animal I'd ever heard. Then was almost chittering that came in between the shrieks, and the movement of the trees became almost calculated, threatening. We stopped dead in our tracks, frozen, as my granddad started to use his light to look around. I was far more freaked out than he was at this point. He just seemed perplexed, curious, and a bit baffled at what could make that sound. It sounded human, but with no words, with no urge of the tone of help or "I'm just screaming to mess with you." We continued on. It mostly stopped, and it seemed like another natural and distinct sounds had gone almost silent. I listened intently to the sound of my boots crunching with the dry aspen leaves underfoot, trying to tell myself that it was just some weird coyote or a horrible deformed larynx of something. Maybe 20 minutes from the main trail that would lead us to the truck, we heard the chattering sound again and the sounds of thumping against dead leaves. Looking around with our lights, in between the deadfall, maybe 12 to 15 feet in front of us, was a large human like thing. It was almost hunched down with long, slender arms around the front of a standing aspen. The aspen, of course, was pale white, with the knots being dark brown, and whatever it was had skin almost as pale. I caught a very brief glimpse of its face. It seemed round, and the eyes seemed sunken, and I could not tell you the eye color, other than a flash of reflection on the eye from my light, and that its face seemed sunken and emaciated. I didn't see any fur or hair. I never felt like it looked right at me, more my grandfather, and just in our direction, almost confused and curious, like he was before with the sound. For a mere couple of seconds, I caught a glimpse of it, but that was it. I looked down at the ground, holding my eyes shut tight, trying to imagine being safe and secure in the truck. My grandfather took a few stumbling steps backward toward me. I heard the thing go off to our side, moving quickly and with purpose through the trees to the side, and then drop down behind us. I assumed according to the sound, but I hope it went the opposite direction. My grandfather turned to where it had veered off, as to follow it, but he soon stopped and looked at me. I had never before and never since seen him confused, baffled, horrified, curious, and in awe. I was crying at this point, ugly crying, trying to muffle my shaking breath and voice, and I asked him what that was. Over and over I asked, and he had no answer. He pulled his gun off his shoulder and put the cap back on the nipple of the igniter, making the gun live, and he then carried it in front of his body on his arm. He pulled out another headlamp and put it on himself. We started walking again toward the trail as he listed off, talking to himself as to what it wasn't. Things like couldn't have been a deer or an elk or a moose. It had arms. It was hunched. It stood upright. Or a bear, a very sick bear. It could have been a bear. Was it the light? We heard the sound, the screeching. Human howled distantly once more before reaching the trail, which was dirt and gravel, but fairly flat, with no deadfall. We practically jogged to the truck. I locked the doors immediately and sobbed, and my granddad turned the music on as loud as possible to try and distract me on the way back to camp. I was a mess when we arrived back, and he went to talk to the others by the fire when he got me settled in my sleeping bag in my bunk. He explained some to his friends, but I don't know what was all said. Next day, everyone was extra sweet to me, trying to comfort me and saying it was probably just a sick animal that looked scared in the dark, or scary in the dark. The deer the hunter shot was found the next day in daylight, scavenged quite harshly by what I assumed was coyotes. To this day, he has no clue what it was, nor what that sound was, and before and since I've heard both coyote and many other animal sounds that never even compared to that. The scientist in me and in my grandfather, the hopeful and blissful ignorant people in us hope and speculate it was a deformed sick animal in scant light, but I still have no clue of what this thing was, and I hope I never experience it again. And tonight's final encounter. And this is one of the reasons, well, this and many other encounters like this is why I don't see an issue with what Brad did by hunting these creatures. A few weeks ago, my uncle and two cousins came out to visit my mom and dad for a barbecue. We have one every year on the 1st of May because it happens to be my mom and dad's anniversary. So it's the 1st of May, and my uncle and two cousins come out to the house. We had just moved back in February, so we were all excited to have our first get together out there. It was really nice. We're situated on a mountain top with a decently sized yard that was completely surrounded by woods. My dad had plans to clear out a few sections of woods so that he could put deer feeders out, so he could have a chance of getting some hunting out there. While he hadn't started preparing to begin cutting trees down, he decided to test the water, as he phrased it, and put 8 or 9 trail cams in to see if there were any deer worth hunting. I had helped him out by setting up some trail cams, finding good spots, and figuring out what position they should be facing. Then that was the end of that. So while my dad and uncle were hovering over the grill, me and my cousins decided to relieve our boredom by playing on the backyard. We had a trampoline set up. The original owners of the house had decided to include their pool in the deal, along with a volleyball court they had made on the far side of the swimming pool, bordering the woods. So me and my cousins are enjoying ourselves on the trampoline without a care in the world. After a short while, my dad and uncle came to us and announced that dinner was ready. So we all went in and grabbed a plate, then back outside to the back deck and sat down and ate. Me and my dad were the first finished. My dad looked at me and suggested that we should go out and test the cameras. We had done this many times before, sometimes even checking 3 or 4 times a week just to see what was out in those woods. However, this time would be a little different. Me and my dad are going around the property checking all the trail cams. We got to the point where we only hadn't checked one of them, but for some reason we couldn't find it. After searching around for 10 minutes or so, we eventually found the exact tree it should have been on. I remember placing it on this specific tree. It was one of those trees that once you saw it again after the first time, it was near impossible not to recognize it. So my dad came up to me and started looking around, questioning that I had put the trail camera on this specific tree. I told him several times that I was 100% positive that this was the tree I placed the camera on. So we started circling the tree looking for any signs of the missing trail cam. While we were shuffling around trying to find it, I kicked something hard. I tripped over myself and looked down at my feet to see what had tripped me up. And there it was. Well, what was left of it, the trail cam. My dad came over to me and he saw it was clearly destroyed. The trail cam was completely and utterly destroyed. Upon further examination of the camera, we learned that the heavy-duty ratchet straps we had used to secure it around the large tree had also been torn apart. Literally, it looked as though something had destroyed it. My dad, thinking that whatever did this must have stepped into range, which was a success. The trail cam, which was almost damn near indestructible, this was damaged so badly to a point where my dad couldn't even open it. My dad, not wanting to admit defeat, grabbed his knife and exclaimed that he was going to get this thing open to at least get the memory card. That was all he seemed to care about at that moment. So after a few minutes of forcing my knife into the trail cam, he finally managed to open it. It took him a second to fully realize where the spot for the memory chip was supposed to be in the tangled mess. When he finally found the spot of the memory card, he pulled it out, and to his utter disbelief, it was broken in several different places while inside the camera. My dad was beyond upset at this point because not only did he lose a $150 trail cam, he also lost his only chance of figuring out what this was. Now, even more upset, before he said let's go back to the house, he picked up the trail cam and we both headed back. He told the others what had happened to the trail cam and showed them. Fast forward to night. My dad, uncle, me, and my two cousins all went into the woods, just practically clinging to the hope that one of the other cameras had spotted this thing that destroyed the other camera. My uncle went with my dad, and me and my cousins were together. We began checking every trail cam. So my cousins and I are heading towards the location of the third camera to just retrieve the memory card, because my dad had told all of us to grab the memory cards and he'll search them together. We got 15 yards away from the third camera, and in an instant a chill ran from the top of my head all the way to my feet. I told my two cousins about this and they said, we feel it too. We started panning, looking to see if we could see anything. Then I picked up on something. In the direction we were heading to get the camera, I saw a figure. Me, thinking it was either my dad or my uncle, called out by saying, "Hello." Then it looked right at me and my cousins. I immediately knew that it was neither my dad or uncle because it had glowing red eyes. At first glance, I thought maybe it was a deer, thinking that it was just reflecting lights from our flashlight back to us, but that theory went straight out the window when we turned our flashlights away from it, and this creature stood up. I watched in utter horror and disbelief as it stood up very slowly from about the level of a deer would be to being about 9 feet from the ground. As me and my cousins are standing there in shock, it let out this deep guttural growl and started advancing towards us. I was the first to snap out of the sort of trance I was in and grabbed both of my cousins and tried to get them to run. One of my cousins managed to get out of his trance as well, and we both tried to grab our other cousin. My other cousin finally showed a sign that he was out of his trance just before I could utter the words to run. This thing leapt into the air and landed on top of my cousin. That took the longest to snap out of it. Myself and my other cousin fell to the ground as the creature landed, then let out a loud growl before getting off my cousin and grabbing him by his throat. It lifted him off the ground and roared directly into his face before looking at my other cousin, the one who was getting back to his feet. The creature threw the first cousin away from it, then hit the other cousin in the face, causing him to fall back to the ground. Then it looked directly at me. It took one gigantic step forward and lifted me from the ground. Then did the same roar that it had done to my cousin, only much louder. I yelled for my cousins to run if it could. One cousin was helping his brother back to his feet after being thrown. They ended up looking at each other, then the creature, and decided there was only one thing to do. In desperate measures, they each picked up a fallen tree branch from the ground and charged at the creature. One of my cousins connected a swing to its head while the other went directly for its arm the creature had me in. The force of the blow to the creature's head caused it to falter, while multiple hits to the arm caused it to drop me. My cousins tried to get more swings in, but the creature managed to right itself and caught both incoming blows, going directly for its head. It grabbed both of my cousins, one in each hand, then threw them away from it, causing my cousins to drop their branches they were using as weapons and falling to the ground. All three of us got together and tried to run, but the creature swung one of its arms and connected to all three of our chests, causing us to fall again. The creature reared back its head and let out a horrifying roar. I had never heard anything like it and started moving towards us. Just then a gunshot rang out, then another, then another. All three shots connected to the creature. It looked up and just in time. I looked up just in time to see the creature fall to the ground, appearing lifeless. I look over my shoulder and see my dad and uncle both standing there, as white as sheets, both holding their guns in their hands. They both hurried over to me and my cousin and told us to run back to the house, fearing the creature may not be dead. My cousins booked it back to the house, whereas I did not. I wanted revenge. I wanted it dead for good. I jerked the gun out of my uncle's hands and proceeded to empty the rest of the magazine into its chest. Once I knew it was dead, I hit it across the face with the shoulder stock of the gun and spat on it, saying, "How'd you like that?" I handed my uncle his rifle, which he immediately loaded another mag into. I walked past my dad and started heading back toward the house, with my uncle and dad following close behind. We get to the edge of the woods and start making our way across the field to the house. Then out of nowhere we hear several more growls and roars, sounding almost exactly like the creature we had just killed. Hearing this, then immediately my dad screamed, "Run!" So we did. All three of us started to book it across the field to the house. We hopped a 4-foot tall chain link fence that made up the dimensions of our front yard and ran up the stairs to the front porch. My dad and uncle both turn and start to fire. Not at all anything, almost like they were trying to scare the creatures off. That was until one of them showed up itself. Then both my uncle and dad shot it at the same time. It fell to the ground lifeless, and then everything went silent. No more growls or roars to be heard, nothing at all. Everything just went completely silent. All three of us went inside. And the entire night, everyone in the house who knew how to operate a firearm safely had one in their hands or on their person. It stayed that way until the next morning. Then the next morning came. Against everything that was screaming in the back of our minds, myself, my cousins, my dad, and uncle went back to the woods. We were trying to see if we could find the bodies of the two creatures we had killed, and to our disappointment, we found nothing, except, of course, the blood of a creature myself had mag dumped into. That was all we found, just that one pool of blood. Phew. That event had completely changed my life. It changed how I viewed the outside, let alone nighttime. I still live in that house, and I am still afraid that it could happen again. We've had no experiences since that night. Alright guys, that was today's terrifying upload. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And with that, my friends, stay safe. May the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path that we call life.